Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Before we begin, may I just say a few words about what will happen today? Because some aspects of it will be unusual to those of you who've been following the inquiries so far, and some of you were not here last week when I made my first restriction order restraining people from saying anything which might lead to the identification of the witness on that particular day. Today, we will hear two accounts of sons who lost their lives to infection. The first will be given by two parents who I understand wish to be known as Alan and Chris. They will be supported by their daughter. Their daughter won't be giving evidence and so won't take the oath, but both Alan and Chris will be asked questions and will take the oath as a result. And that explains why there are now 3 seats in front of you. There will, on occasions, later on in the inquiry, be as many as 6 seats, where we have a group of 6 people who were infected or affected, who have particular points to make about certain parts of the evidence and whose stories will be heard in that way, rather than focusing just upon 1 or maybe 2 people at a time. But today you have your first foretaste of that in there being 2 witnesses who will be giving evidence together about the same victim. The next 2 witnesses after that, so that'll be after Alan and Chris, are both witnesses who have asked us to pay particular respect to their anonymity, and I consider it is right to do so. So in their cases, nothing may be published which may lead to their identification. Indeed, before each gives evidence, I shall formally make an order just to remind those of you who are here now and anyone who might have come in between now and then that they must not do so. And indeed, it would be a serious offence for them to do that. But one of the reasons for mentioning it is that you may ask, well, if they're sitting there, why aren't they having their image live screened across the nation? And the answer is that in those cases, the cameras will not be showing their faces. Instead, they'll have to put up with Miss Richards. Or me. But I think largely Miss Richards. What they say, you will hear. And in one case, the witness this afternoon, it is unavoidable, if we are to make sense of her testimony and allow her to give evidence as she would wish, that she will mention the names of her sons. In her case, that might lead to her identification. And so nothing may be said by anyone which mentions the names of her sons or any other member of her family, for that matter, because they might lead to her identification. You may ask, when you hear it, well, this is being recorded, the transcript goes out from the inquiry. Why isn't the world, why don't they have that name? And the answer is that we have processes in place which make sure that where the transcript is published, there will be a blank wherever the name appears. That means that if you want to look back tomorrow or the day after at what you've seen and heard, you won't see anything of the witness, and you won't read all the details of what someone has said. That is the part of the lengths to which we will go in a proper case to protect the anonymity of someone who wishes us to do so. I'm sure there are some details of that which Ms. Richards will add to in due course, but that's the broad outline of what will happen. Now, first, Ms. Richards, do you want to say anything more about that?
So, only this. The evidence, both of Alan and Chris, and of our following witness, who'll be referred to as Mr. B, will be live streamed as normal. In the case of the witness who will be referred to as Mrs. C, who is giving evidence this afternoon, although, as you've explained, sir, she is likely in the course of her evidence to mention her son by name because it would not be practical or fair to expect her to do otherwise, given the nature of the events that she will be relating. And so those who are sitting in this room hearing her evidence will learn her son's name. The restriction order that you have made, sir, prevents anybody in this room disclosing or publishing or repeating that name, and her evidence will not be live streamed. So those watching from elsewhere will not be able to follow live this afternoon's evidence. However, a written transcript of her evidence will be published on the inquiry's website with names redacted later on, probably later this evening, possibly tomorrow. And the audio recording of her evidence will be made public after the audio technicians have removed any references to any names in the course of her evidence. So it will be public, but her evidence will not be live streamed this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Well, shall we have Alan and Chris?
Yes, please.
Do we sit or do we stand?
Sit. It's absolutely fine. If I start with you, Chris. Please state your full name.
Alan Bertie Fowle.
Thank you. And repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely,
I do solemnly, sincerely,
and truly declare and affirm
and truly declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
I'm Chris.
Please state your full name
Christine Miriam Fowle.
and repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely,
I do solemnly and sincerely
and truly declare and affirm
and truly declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
You want a copy? That's Mum's.
So, Alan and Chris, you're here today to tell us about your son, Christopher, who was born in June 1974, I think. And you have one other daughter, Joanne, who sits with you today to give you support.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, Christopher was diagnosed with haemophilia when he was very young, is that right?
Yes.
What can you recall, either of you, about the circumstances in which he was diagnosed?
When he was maybe 6 months, I was doing the motherly thing, changing a nappy, and he had a huge bruise on his leg here, and which, no reason for it. So I immediately took him to the doctor, and fortunately the doctor immediately got to a paediatrician at Harrogate Hospital, who went on from there. So within a month, fortunately, before 12 months, he was diagnosed as a severe haemophiliac. He had less than 1% clotting factor.
And for the first year or so after his diagnosis, I think he was treated at St James's Hospital in Leeds.
Yes.
But after that, his care was transferred to the care of Harrogate General Hospital, and he was under the care of a doctor there called Dr McAvoy.
Yes.
Now, preschool, so when Christopher was very young, did he have much of a problem with the haemophilia?
No, he didn't, did he? No.
Not too much.
No, not too much. Not until I suppose it was school, starting with school, when he started to have more frequent bleeds. Yeah.
On the occasions in those first few years when he did need treatment, was it cryoprecipitate that he was given at first?
Yes, initially it was cryoprecipitate, not for long. The factor rate came in fairly quickly, didn't it?
Fairly soon after we started getting regular treatment. The problem with the cryoprecipitate was it was such a huge volume, it used to involve massive pain for him.
And so he started school, and you've described in your statement how with the rough and tumble of playing on a concrete playground, he would get lots of bumps, he would get bleeds, and you were having to take him to hospital, I think, pretty frequently. Is that right?
Yeah, it was maybe 2-3 times a week it could be.
And you ended up moving him to a different school without a concrete playground and I think smaller numbers where you hoped he wouldn't have so many bumps and wouldn't need so much treatment.
Yes.
But he did continue to need treatment, and there came a point in time when Christopher's treatment switched from cryoprecipitate to factor VIII products.
Yes.
Can you recall anything at all about any conversations you had with doctors at the time the treatment changed to factor products?
Not over and above the fact that it would be far more convenient for us, and we would be able to take our medicine if we're on a holiday or go visiting, to take our medicine with us, etc. Nothing. I can't remember anything.
Well, you
over
did
and
ask
above
about the safety factor of the factor
A
VIII.
bit later, wasn't it?
So I think there came a point when you asked about safety,
Yes.
but that was that later?
It was when media start breaking news about HIV infection, and it being a blood product. I went and asked our consultant. I told our consultant I was concerned, and he assured me that I didn't have to be because it was generally in the homosexual community.
Well, I think you say in your statements you were pleased with the factor VIII products because it was less painful for Christopher, and you understood that one of the objectives was that it could be administered at home either by you or by Christopher himself. Is that right?
Yes.
If we just have up on screen, please, Paul, a document. It's 1805002. And this should come up on screen, a handwritten document. Now, I'm not going to ask you anything about the detail of this, but this is one of the few bits and pieces of Christopher's records that you have. And we can see here, it shows from 1981 onwards for a number of years up until, I think, 1989, Christopher receiving regular factor VIII products, often on a weekly basis.
Yes.
Is that accord with your recollection?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That can come down. But at the time that the factor products were first starting to be used on Christopher, leaving aside any later conversations you might have had with the doctors, were you given any information about there being any risks of infection associated with those products?
No.
And were you ever given any information or advice about any differences between different types of factor products?
No.
Now, you again said in your statements that it didn't occur to you to question what was being recommended for Christopher because you placed your faith in the professional judgment of the doctors looking after him, and you didn't think doctors would give your child anything that was unsafe. Is that right?
That's right.
And I think it goes without saying, but your statement does say it, that had you been informed about any risks, your attitude to the suggestion of the change in treatment would have been very different.
I'm sure it would have been. Yes.
Now, I think the doctor showed you both how you might administer the factor VIII, how you might mix it up, I think is the phrase you use, and administer it. What can you remember about that?
Gosh, we would He was injected himself at home, so we were making up the medicine at home, or if we were away. I can't remember I think it was one of the nurses actually, who showed us how to make it up safely and cleanly. Can you remember?
Yes, I can. And with regards the developing the ability to inject Christopher, we were taken to a session at the hospital, and we had to inject each other and find a vein and so forth. And we both did it successfully, but realised how difficult it was. And Christopher's veins were much smaller than ours, and we were worried about the danger of actually cutting the vein, which we could do with the point of the needle. So we adopted more the attitude that we'd take the medicine with us wherever we went, and we'd then go along to a hospital, and we would offer to mix up the medicine for them, for a doctor to inject. And sometimes that worked, and sometimes it didn't, because strangers walking in saying, "Inject this into my son," they didn't want to know.
Yes, you've explained, I think, a couple of times you were away from home, and so you would have to take him to the hospital that was local to where
That's
you
right.
were, rather than your normal local hospital, with the bottles, and the doctors would refuse to do the injections.
It did
Yes.
happen, yes.
And you, because of the concerns the two of you had about you injecting Christopher, for the reasons you've explained, Alan, you thought it was important that he should learn how to self-administer the
Yes.
treatment. And for a period of time, he went to a residential school where there would be those who could assist him to do that. Is that right?
Yes.
It was a facility being run, I understand, by Newcastle University, Welburn College up in North Yorkshire Moors. And the idea was that if he developed the ability, he'd have so much more freedom.
I don't think Christopher was terribly impressed with your idea, from what I gather from your statement. He wasn't so keen on it, but did he learn to self-administer?
Yes, he wasn't there very long, and he did self-administer, yes.
Now, there came a time when Christopher was about 9 years old, I think, when Dr. McAvoy called you both to see him at the hospital. What can you recall of that discussion that then took place?
Amazingly little. I can't even remember whether I was called especially, or whether I was just going because Christopher. But yes, we were called to the hospital anyway, and we were told that Christopher had been infected, and he was now HIV positive. Really, that was it.
And that was it, really.
Really, that was it.
He was 9 years old.
9-10 years young.
And you've said in your statement, but I don't know whether this was something that you were told at the time or later, that Dr. McAvoy said that Christopher might expect to live for another 12 years.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
And I think one of you has a recollection that at some point, you're not, I think, sure whether it was then or later, you were told that doctors had been able to trace the infected blood to an infected donor.
We were, but I mean, that was just a point of reference that the doctor told us. But we've never given a name or any details. I didn't particularly want to. They couldn't do that. But they did say they had traced it. We know no more than that.
Were you given any other advice or information about the condition at that time or prognosis?
No.
Amazingly, well, none, really.
Were you given any advice or information about how to manage any risks of infecting others?
No.
And I think you had a particular concern given Christopher's age, and he used to play with his friends and do all sorts of activities.
Yes.
You had a concern about the risk of him infecting other children.
That's right.
Yes, because we didn't know what was dangerous and what wasn't. You know, we just had to glean what we could, really. But the information that came through from the hospital was
Minimal.
very
we didn't
inadequate.
get any.
It was inadequate, yeah.
And your reaction on being given that information, you put in your statement very powerfully. You say, we were devastated because our son was an innocent 9-year-old. His life was going to be cut short because he had been treated with blood products that were not safe.
That's right.
Now, you decided, given Christopher's very young age, not to tell him at that point about his illness.
Yes.
And you decided you wanted to do everything you could to make the years he had happy.
Yes.
And there was a particular activity that Christopher loved and that you encouraged. Can you tell us about that?
A remote control car racing, 10th scale, and we travelled all over the country.
I'll take over.
Yeah.
We travelled all, Alan and Chris travelled all up and down the country and abroad with this remote control, because it was something that he could get really excited and passionate about. But it wasn't like football or,
Non-contact.
no contact sports, which he couldn't do. And for maybe 4 or 5 years, it became his passion, and it took up a lot of your time, didn't it, on weekends and...
Well, my background being engineering, I spent a long time developing the models for him.
And so that's where we found something that he could be passionate about, and that's what we wanted for him.
And he did pretty well in competitions.
He was sitting high, second
in
and
the
third in the
top
country.
20 in two groups.
Top 20 in 2 groups, yeah.
Now, Krista, of course, did keep receiving factor products because of his underlying condition. But this, I think, was the point in time at which you were told that the products were now heat treated, and you were told that they would be safe. What ongoing care or support, if any, did the hospital provide after you were informed of that diagnosis, other than the routine haemophilia care?
None that I'm aware of.
No.
Now, there came a point when you decided that you needed to tell Christopher. When was that?
When he was 15, he was becoming a young man, and you had the obvious dangers of becoming a young man. And it was time for him to realise his responsibilities, really, and how dangerous things were. So I told him the situation. He seemed to take it very well. Probably at 15 you don't understand the full consequences. But he did come home. He went out that night with some friends, and he did come home and said, Mum, I was looking around and thinking, I'm different. I'm not like these people. And immediately separated himself out in here. I'm quite convinced of that, We took life from there.
You again said in your statements, both of you, that you weren't sure at that stage, at least, whether he fully understood the implications. He was only 15.
15, it's...
He was a bright lad, though.
He was he was a bright lad, and I think he understood to a point, but...
Maybe not the acceptance.
Yeah, you can't be absolutely sure. I think he understood enough, and we were quite adamant of trying to tell him how safe he must be.
You've explained in your statements that in addition to the HIV, Christopher was also infected with hepatitis C.
Mm-hmm.
Just dealing first of all with the HIV, had you been asked for your consent for him to be tested, or even told that he was going to be tested for that condition? And then the hepatitis C, how did you find out that Christopher was infected with hepatitis C?
Yeah.
Alan was in...
In an evening.
Pardon?
An evening once.
Yeah.
Young
We'd go out, if he got head knocks, it was an evening one anyway, and Alan said something about, you must be worried about the HIV dangers. And doctor turned around and said, I'm more worried about the hepatitis C. And we went, we didn't know, did we?
No.
No, we
Not
didn't know.
until that point.
Then it was almost in passing conversation.
Was any advice or information ever given to the two of you about being tested yourselves for HIV or hepatitis C?
No. Well, I was tested the one time I told you.
And can you tell us about that? How you came to be tested?
Alan was away and he had banged his head during the day. I was still at the hospital then, and he had a head knock, and I took him up to the hospital, and the doctor refused to take the needle because you usually just put it in a sharps box, and she refused to have it in the hospital and wrapped it up in tissue and gave it to me. This is one early hours of the morning. I put it in my pocket, got home, and I was pricked. I phoned the hospital the next day, and they had me up there for a test, and it was clear. But it was dreadful Alan at the hospital, you can imagine, but they never, ever retested me, because I think, it can be up to 6 months, I understand. No, I was never, ever retested.
Now, in terms of Christopher's physical condition, he seemed reasonably well, I think, for a while, whilst doing the kind of activities that you've described. But there came a point at which he started to become physically unwell.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
He coped very well for a few years, and then he started to lose weight. And then for a year, he actually picked up. Do you remember, Alan, when you were playing golf with him every night? Do you remember that, Joe? And that was 1 year, and then the last... Would you say it was the last 6 months or the last year of his life when he really started going downhill?
18 months, I'd say.
18 months, would you say? Last 18 months of his life, he started to go down, started to lose weight, and he never carried a lot of weight anyway. And he just got worse, and...
You gave up work. You gave up work.
And I stopped working because I needed to nurse him. And we turned part of our house, a little snug room, into his bedroom.
He had the hospital with pneumonia, remember? He had 2 bouts of pneumonia, didn't he, when he was in hospital?
He had 2 bouts of pneumonia, and he was in hospital.
Yes, he did. Do you know, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. Had 2 bouts of pneumonia, and he went into hospital. I had district nurses every day coming in, and then the ulcers, horrible ulcers, infected ulcers in his legs, and a lot of pain. And this went on for the last 18 months until...
It got progressively worse, didn't it? Progressively worse, the last 6 months.
Progressively worse. And that last 6 months, the district nurses were coming in every day, redressing his ulcers and his infections. And
our main problem was hygiene. We didn't have a downstairs.
We didn't have downstairs cloakroom, and I was getting. I have to say, I have to admit that I was getting tired, And the district nurse tried to persuade him to go into our local hospice, which he absolutely refused to do.
Respite for you. Really.
Yeah, as part of respite for me. And anyway, she said, "Look, just come for the 2 weeks. You need a bath. You really do need a bath." And 2 days, sorry, long weekend, not 2 weeks. And he did. He agreed to, and said it was really lovely, so he thought he'd stay for a fortnight. And in that fortnight, he passed away. It's not pleasant. He was very, very
Jaundiced.
thin, very thin, jaundiced, and he did go blind. And that was the last thing I remember really of him not being able to see.
And I think he died the day after his 22nd birthday.
Yes, he did.
In the years before that, before the end, how had his emotional state been? I think he left school at 15 in the end, is that right?
Yes, he did. He You get me here, Joe, because you're being his sister. You also probably spoke to him more than we did at times. He sort of lost interest in me.
Yeah,
Yes.
agree.
Yes. As he got older, he was angry. He lost interest in, not in living as such, but as doing anything constructive with his life. Is this right? Yes.
Lost a bit of purpose, didn't he?
Sorry?
Lost his purpose.
Yes, yeah, that's good. Yes, he did. He lost his purpose. He didn't have a purpose, you know.
And you said in your statements he began not to care what was happening around him and to understand that his life wouldn't be normal. His life would end prematurely.
Absolutely.
You left it to him, I think, to decide if he would tell any of his friends.
As he got older, once we were told, I advised him not to. I have to say that. I did advise him not to. The main reason for that is just the whole media thing was just horrendous, and it still
Stigma
was.
that was
Even
there.
then, it was still not good.
About AIDS.
Yeah. He told I found out when he was poorly, actually, right at the end when he was very poorly, that he'd told one girlfriend, a friend that was a girl, and Heidi knew, and she gave him a big cuddle, you know. That was the only person in his wisdom he decided to tell. Yes.
You've shared with us a photograph of Christopher before he became
Yes.
physically very unwell.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask for that photograph to be displayed, please, Paul. It's 18050003. So how old was Christopher then?
19.
Yeah, that was in his good year.
19? Was he 19?
18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
late teens.
And he didn't want photos taken after that, you said.
He never had all his life. He hated his photograph being taken. And that was the last good photograph we got of him, yeah.
Under duress from his sister.
Thank you, Paul. Because you were trying to give him a sense of purpose as he got a little older, having left school, I think you arranged for him to come and work in your firm that you were running, your
Yes.
business you were running.
I had a very technically capable university student who was running the CAD system, the computer design, and we put Christopher with him, and he taught him how to use the CAD drawing system. So he had a small purpose in his life, and we used to pressure him to get drawings out on time to send to clients, and sometimes it worked, sometimes we had to get them done by the student.
And then, as he got worse, I think emotionally also he would become very upset. You've described you might have a quiet family evening sitting around watching TV, and then suddenly he would break down and start sobbing uncontrollably. In the course of those last few weeks and months when you had the district nurses visiting, I think one of the district nurses told you at some point something Christopher had said about you both.
Do I have to repeat that?
Shall I repeat it?
Please.
He said, "I have the most brilliant parents." You'd borne the brunt of this largely in secret, I think. You didn't tell family and friends.
We told close family, obviously his sister, grandparents. That was all. That's all we told.
And after Christopher died, I think the doctor's certificate had put the cause of his death down as HIV or AIDS. And you asked for that to be changed because you didn't want that to be how his death was remembered. Is that right?
I did, because we were protecting Christopher's memory, really. That was all.
Were any of you, Christopher, either of you, your daughter, were you ever offered any form of counselling or any kind of emotional support?
Yes, by the hospice.
So in the last 2 weeks?
Not from the NHS, but by the hospice.
After Christopher died.
After he died. This was
Yeah.
after he passed away, yes. But I didn't do it.
And you've said in your witness statement that you feel that Christopher's death was avoidable, and you've said that for a very specific reason based upon things you think could have happened at the time. Do you want to just tell us what those are?
If it was avoidable because I believe, or we all believe, don't we, that the government or health service knew of the risks of buying blood from, say, America, and not knew the risk. I honestly do believe that, and the fact that they knew also that if these products are heated to a certain level, you can kill any carryover from them, you know, and that didn't happen. There's another part of this answer, you know, and it's gone out of my head.
Don't worry.
now.
Your statement, and let me prompt you in relation to your statement. You've talked about how the two of you attended a seminar run by the Haemophilia Society, and I think you learnt something there that you thought
Yes,
was
we
relevant.
did. We attended a seminar run by the Haemophiliac Society, and there was a doctor there who had come across.
Well, she developed a system of centrifuging blood from donors so she could separate the white cells from the red cells, which meant that red-chested donors could donate twice as often, and we could have become self-sufficient in the country. She needed 6 of these machines, I think.
To run up and down the country, and government wouldn't entertain it because of the what?
Because of the outlay.
Yeah, because of the outlay. Yeah.
I'm just going to read one last bit from your statement because I think it's probably easier for me to read it than ask you to say it. You've both said this in your statements. Christopher should never have lost his life. He was our only son. We have been denied seeing him get married, have children, travel, and most of all sharing our lives with him as we get older. We do not think time will heal our pain because we forever think about what might have been. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's just about sums it up for me.
Okay. Alan?
No.
Okay. I'm going to turn and ask Stephen Snowden, who, as you know, represents you, if there's anything further. Nothing further, sir.
There is just one thing which I want to ask you about. It's something which Miss Richards did mention, but the transcript doesn't show that you replied, and I can't remember you having replied. And it was about what you were told sometime in the middle of the 1980s about heat-treated blood.
There was the concentrate that we made up, and we were told, this was with hindsight and retrospect, that if that factor VIII that was infected with HIV had been heat treated initially, when factor VIII first came onto the market, then this disaster wouldn't have happened.
Did he go on receiving factor VIII after you knew that he was HIV positive?
We had to do that because he...
Then it was heat treated after a certain
Oh, it was heat treated after a certain point anyway.
We were told then it was safe.
You were told then it was safe?
Yes, but Christopher was
Do you
already...
remember roughly when that was?
Well, it was obviously after he was 9 years old, because the thing is that he already had HIV then. So.
It would have been after 1984.
After post-date 1984.
Which, yeah, that would make him 10 years old, thereabouts. Yeah.
So is around 1985, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say so.
Do you remember who told you that?
Christine, I wasn't privy to this
No,
one.
I can't. I had. It would have
Must
been.
have been
It would
Dr.
probably have
McAvoy,
been a
anyway.
conversation with Dr. McAvoy,
That would be Dr. McAvoy at Leeds.
the consultant haematologist
At Harrogate, I think.
at Harrogate
At
Hospital.
Harrogate, thank you. Yes, that's all that I have to ask. Thank you very much indeed for all of you for coming to give the evidence of you, Alan and Christine, helped, I think, by your daughter. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, we shall take a break
Thank you, sir.
now, as usual. We'll take a break until, let us say, 10:45 to. Let's say 10 to
10 to 12, sir.
10 to 12.
Thank you.